The elegant crystal wineglass slipped from Victoria Manning's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of her own kitchen. Blood trickled from her nose as she collapsed, her vision blurring. Through the haze, she could see her mother-in-law, Eleanor Blackwood, standing over her with cold satisfaction. "I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss." Finally, Eleanor whispered, adjusting her pearl necklace, "Now my son can have the life he deserves, with someone worthy of our family name." But death wasn't the end for Victoria Manning. It was just the beginning of Eleanor Blackwood's worst nightmare. Victoria Manning had always believed she was living a fairy tale. At 28, she was the successful owner of 3 boutique flower shops in downtown Seattle, married to Dr. James Blackwood, one of the city's most respected pediatric surgeons. Their penthouse apartment overlooked Elliott Bay, and she spent her days creating beautiful arrangements for Seattle's elite while James saved children's lives. The only shadow in her perfect world was Eleanor. Eleanor Blackwood was old Seattle money, the kind of woman who traced her lineage back to the city's founding families and never let anyone forget it. She lived in a mansion in Queen Anne, served on the boards of every important charity, and treated Victoria like an unwelcome stain on the family's pristine reputation. James could have married Senator William's daughter, Eleanor would say during their monthly family dinners, her voice dripping with disdain. Instead, he chose a shopkeeper. Victoria had learned to smile through these comments, to focus on James's hand squeezing hers under the table, his whispered apologies later. She told herself that love would eventually win over Eleanor's cold heart. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Victoria was arranging white orchids for the Hartwell wedding when her assistant, Maria, burst through the door of her flagship store. "Mrs. Blackwood, you need to see this," Maria said, her face pale as she held out her phone. The screen showed a gossip blog post, "Seattle's Golden Doctor spotted at exclusive resort," with mystery brunette. The photos were grainy but unmistakable. James laughing with a stunning woman at a luxury spa in Napa Valley. The same spa where he'd told Victoria he was attending a medical conference. Victoria's hands shook as she scrolled through the images. The woman was everything Victoria wasn't. Tall, sophisticated, wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than Victoria's monthly rent before she'd married James. In one photo, the woman's hand rested on James's chest as they shared an intimate moment by a pool. "This can't be real," Victoria whispered, but her heart was already breaking. She called James immediately. His phone went straight to voicemail. She tried again, and again. Finally, he answered on the 5th attempt. "Victoria, I'm in surgery prep. What's wrong?" "James, I need you to be honest with me. Are you having an affair?" The silence stretched so long Victoria thought the call had dropped. "We'll talk when I get home," he said finally, his voice cold in a way she'd never heard before. But James didn't come home that night. Or the next. Victoria threw herself into work, trying to ignore the pitying looks from her employees and the whispered conversations that stopped when she walked into a room. The gossip blogs had picked up the story, and suddenly Victoria Manning Blackwood was Seattle's most famous betrayed wife. 3 days later, Eleanor appeared at Victoria's shop. "We need to talk," Eleanor announced, sweeping past the displays of fresh flowers like a queen entering her court. Victoria led her to the back office, her stomach churning. Eleanor had never visited the shop before. She'd made it clear that she considered Victoria's business beneath the Blackwood family standard. "I assume you've seen the photographs," Eleanor said, settling into the chair across from Victoria's desk with the air of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "If you're here to gloat, I'm here to offer you a solution." Eleanor's pale blue eyes were calculated. "James made a mistake, but it's not too late to fix this. The girl he's with, Sophia Chen, she's nobody. A social climber who works at some tech company. She'll disappear if we handle this correctly." Victoria stared at her mother-in-law. "You want me to do what exactly? Pretend this never happened? I want you to be smart. James is going through a midlife crisis. Men his age often do foolish things, but you're his wife. You have the power to save your marriage and our family's reputation." The way Eleanor said "our family" made Victoria's skin crawl. She'd never been part of the family in Eleanor's eyes. just an accessory that James had unfortunately chosen. What are you suggesting? Eleanor leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Come to dinner on Sunday. The whole family will be there. We'll present a united front. Show James what he's throwing away. I'll even help you pick out something appropriate to wear. The backhanded insult stung, but Victoria found herself nodding. Maybe Eleanor was right. Maybe this was just a phase, and with the right approach, she could win James back. Sunday arrived gray and drizzly, typical Seattle weather that matched Victoria's mood. She'd chosen a conservative navy dress that Eleanor had approved of during their shopping trip. The first time her mother-in-law had ever shown interest in spending time with her. The Blackwood mansion was as imposing as ever, its Tudor revival architecture looming against the overcast sky. Victoria had always felt small in this house, dwarfed by the oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors and the oppressive weight of old money tradition. James was already there when Victoria arrived, looking uncomfortable in the formal dining room. He barely met her eyes as she entered. Victoria, darling. Eleanor cooed, air-kissing her cheeks. You look lovely. Doesn't she look lovely? James. Beautiful as always, James mumbled, but his words lacked warmth. Dinner was a stilted affair. Eleanor dominated the conversation, speaking about charity galas and society events as if nothing had changed. James's father, retired Judge Harold Blackwood, grunted occasional responses while focusing intently on his meal. James's younger sister, Melissa, kept glancing between James and Victoria with barely concealed curiosity. It wasn't until dessert, Eleanor's famous chocolate soufflé, that the real conversation began. James, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, Eleanor said, setting down her wine glass with practiced precision. Victoria's stomach clenched. She'd been dreading this moment all evening. Mother, please, James started, but Eleanor held up a perfectly manicured hand. No, this needs to be said. Victoria, my dear, I owe you an apology. Victoria blinked in surprise. Eleanor apologizing was about as likely as snow in July. I've been too harsh on you over the years. I see that now. You've been nothing but devoted to my son, and you deserve better than what you've been given recently. James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mother, let me finish. Eleanor's voice carried the authority of someone used to commanding rooms full of powerful people. Victoria, I want you to know that whatever foolishness James has gotten himself into, this family stands behind you. You are a Blackwood now, and Blackwoods protect their own. The words should have been comforting, but something in Eleanor's tone set off alarm bells in Victoria's mind. Her mother-in-law was many things. Cold, manipulative, snobbish, but she was never kind without an ulterior motive. Thank you, Victoria managed, unsure how else to respond. Eleanor smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. James, why don't you walk Victoria to her car? I'm sure you two have much to discuss. Outside, the autumn air was crisp and carried the scent of rain. Victoria pulled her coat tighter as James walked beside her in silence. When they reached her car, he finally spoke. Victoria, he ran his hands through his dark hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing. I don't know how to say this. Just say it. I want a divorce. The words hit her like a physical blow. Even though she'd been expecting them since seeing those photos, hearing James say them out loud made everything real. Is it because of her, Sophia? James looked away. It's complicated. No, it's not. Either you love me, or you don't. I do love you, but he struggled with the word. I'm not in love with you anymore. I haven't been for a while. Meeting Sophia just made me realize what was missing. Victoria felt tears building behind her eyes, but she refused to cry in front of him. What was missing, James? What couldn't I give you that she can? She understands me. She gets my world, my ambitions. She pushes me to be better. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. The implication was clear. Victoria had been holding him back. Fine, Victoria said, her voice steadier than she felt. But I want you to know that I fought for us. I tried to save our marriage even after you humiliated me publicly. You're the one walking away. James nodded, looking genuinely remorseful. I know, I'm sorry, Victoria. You deserve someone who loves you the way you deserve to be loved. As Victoria drove home through the dark Seattle streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Eleanor's sudden support, James's timing, the way everything had unfolded, it all felt orchestrated somehow. Over the next few weeks, Victoria threw herself into the divorce proceedings. James was being surprisingly generous with the settlement, offering her half of their shared assets and agreeing to let her keep the flower shops. His lawyer even suggested that James felt guilty about the affair and wanted to make things as easy as possible for Victoria, but it easily felt wrong. James was many things, but generous in failure wasn't one of them. He was competitive, driven, someone who fought for every advantage. The fact that he was rolling over so completely made Victoria suspicious. The answer came from an unexpected source, Melissa, James's sister, who appeared at Victoria's shop on a rainy Thursday afternoon. "We need to talk," Melissa said, glancing around nervously. At 25, she was the rebel of the Blackwood family, an artist who lived in a converted warehouse in Georgetown and had never quite fit into Eleanor's vision of proper society. They went to the coffee shop next door, settling into a corner booth away from other customers. "Melissa, if this is about taking sides in the divorce, it's not about sides." Melissa leaned forward, her voice urgent. "Victoria, my mother is planning something. I don't know exactly what, but I overheard her on the phone last week. She was talking about removing obstacles and clearing the path for James's future." Victoria frowned. "What do you think she meant?" "I think she orchestrated this whole thing. The affair, the divorce, everything. My mother has been planning to get rid of you since the day James announced your engagement." The idea was so outrageous that Victoria almost laughed. "Melissa, your mother may not like me, but she's not some criminal mastermind. She's a socialite who organizes charity luncheons. You don't know her like I do." Melissa's eyes were deadly serious. "My mother has destroyed people before. Business rivals, social competitors, anyone who threatens what she sees as the family's interests. She's never accepted you as part of the family, and now she's found a way to get rid of you permanently." Victoria shook her head. "Even if that were true, the divorce is almost final. She's getting what she wanted. That's just it. I don't think a divorce is enough for her anymore. I think she wants you gone completely." A chill ran down Victoria's spine, but she forced herself to stay rational. "Gone? I don't know. But Victoria, promise me you'll be careful. Don't eat or drink anything she gives you. Don't trust her sudden kindness, and whatever you do, don't let her convince you to come to the house alone." 3 days later, Eleanor called with an invitation. Victoria should have refused. "Victoria, dear, I was hoping you could come by the house tomorrow evening. There are some family heirlooms I'd like you to have before the divorce is finalized. Pieces that belong to James's grandmother. I think she would have wanted you to have them." Victoria knew she should say no. Melissa's warnings echoed in her mind, but the offer of family heirlooms felt like a peace offering, a final gesture of acceptance that she'd always craved from Eleanor. "That's very thoughtful of you," Victoria heard herself saying. "Wonderful. Come around 7. I'll have to cook and prepare something light. We can have a proper goodbye woman to woman." As Victoria hung up the phone, she told herself she was being paranoid. Eleanor might be cold and manipulative, but she wasn't dangerous. She was wrong. The next evening, Victoria drove through the familiar gates of the Blackwood estate for what she didn't know would be the last time. Eleanor greeted her at the door, dressed in an elegant black dress that made her look like she was attending a funeral. "Victoria, you look tired, dear. Have you been sleeping?" Victoria realized she hadn't been sleeping well. The stress of the divorce combined with strange stomach pains that had been plaguing her for weeks had left her feeling drained and weak. "I'm fine," Victoria lied, following Eleanor into the sitting room where a bottle of wine waited on the coffee table. "I've opened a bottle of that Bordeaux you enjoyed at Christmas," Eleanor said, pouring 2 glasses. It seemed appropriate for the occasion. They talked about inconsequential things while they drank. The weather, Victoria's business, Eleanor's upcoming charity gala. But Victoria noticed that Eleanor barely touched her wine while Victoria found herself draining glass after glass, trying to numb the pain of everything she was losing. "The heirlooms are upstairs in my study," Eleanor said eventually. "Shall we go look at them?" Victoria stood up too quickly, and the room spun around her. "I'm sorry. I feel a bit dizzy." "The wine, dear. You always were lightweight." Eleanor's smile was sharp. "Come along." They climbed the grand staircase to Eleanor's private study, a room Victoria had only been in once before. The walls were lined with leather-bound books and family photographs spanning generations of Blackwood success. "Now where did I put those pieces?" Eleanor murmured, moving to an antique jewelry box on her desk. Victoria waited, leaning against the doorframe as another wave of dizziness washed over her. Something was wrong. The room was starting to blur around the edges, and her hands were trembling. "Eleanor?" She started, but her voice came out slurred. "Yes, dear." Eleanor turned around, and her expression was no longer kind. Her pale blue eyes were cold and calculating, like a predator sizing up wounded prey. "I don't feel well." "I imagine you don't." Eleanor moved closer, and Victoria could smell her expensive perfume mixed with something else, something medicinal and bitter. "The digilase takes a while to work, but once it builds up in your system, the effects are quite dramatic." Victoria's blood turned to ice. "What?" "Digitalize. Foxglove. Such a beautiful flower." "Really? I've been adding small amounts to your wine for weeks now. Tonight's dose was just the final push you needed." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. All those dinner invitations, the wine Eleanor had insisted on serving, the stomach pain she'd been experiencing. It all made terrible sense. "You've been poisoning me!" Slowly, carefully, over time. The beauty of digitalize is that the symptoms look like a heart condition. Very sad, very tragic. A young woman in the prime of her life, taken too soon by an undiagnosed cardiac issue exacerbated by the stress of her divorce. Victoria tried to move toward the door, but her legs wouldn't obey her. She collapsed against the wall, her heart racing irregularly in her chest. "Why?" she whispered. Eleanor's mask of civility had completely fallen away, revealing the monster beneath. "Because you were never good enough for my son. Because your little flower shops and middle-class origins were embarrassing to this family. Because James could have married into real power. Senators, tech billionaires, old money families like ours. But instead he chose you. The affair, it was my idea. Sophia Chen is the daughter of a tech mogul worth $800 million. Beautiful, educated, connected. Everything you're not. I introduced them at a medical conference 6 months ago and encouraged their relationship." Victoria felt like she was drowning, each breath becoming more difficult. "James doesn't know. James thinks he fell in love naturally. Men are so easy to manipulate when you appeal to their egos. I simply made sure they spent time together, created opportunities for romance, and let nature take its course." The room was spinning faster now, and Victoria could taste blood in her mouth. "He'll know something's wrong. The timing. The timing is perfect." A heartbroken woman stressed by her husband's affair and their messy divorce suffers cardiac arrest. "The paramedics will find you collapsed in my study, where you came to collect some family heirlooms as a final gesture of goodwill." "I'll be devastated, of course." Poor Victoria, taken so young. Eleanor moved to her desk and picked up the phone. "Hello? Yes, this is Eleanor Blackwood. I need an ambulance immediately. My daughter-in-law has collapsed. I think she's having a heart attack." Victoria tried to speak, to scream, to do anything, but her body was shutting down. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Eleanor's satisfied smile as she hung up the phone. "Finally," Eleanor whispered, adjusting her pearl necklace. "Now my son can have the life he deserves with someone worthy of our family name." But as Victoria's consciousness faded, something strange happened. Instead of the peaceful release of death, she felt a violent jolt, like being pulled backward through time itself. And then she was standing in her flower shop, looking at Maria's shocked face as her assistant held out a phone showing those same gossip blog photos of James and Sophia. But this time, Victoria Manning knew exactly what Eleanor Blackwood was planning. And this time, she was ready to fight back. Victoria's hands were steady as she took the phone from Maria's trembling fingers. The gossip blog photos of James and Sophia at the Napa Valley Resort stared back at her, but this time she felt no shock, no heartbreak, only cold, calculating fury. "Mrs. Blackwood, are you okay? You look pale," Maria said, concern etched across her face. "I'm fine, Maria. Actually, I'm better than fine." Victoria handed the phone back, her mind already racing ahead to what she knew would come next. "Cancel my appointments for the rest of the week. I have some family business to attend to." This time Victoria didn't call James. She knew exactly how that conversation would go. His evasion, his lies, his eventual confession. Instead, she drove straight to her lawyer's office. A sharp-eyed woman named Carmen Rodriguez, who specialized in high-asset divorces. "Victoria, I wasn't expecting you today," Carmen said, looking up from her desk in surprise. "Carmen, I need you to start divorce proceedings immediately. I also need a private investigator, the best one you know." Carmen's eyebrows shot up. "What's going on? My husband is having an affair, but that's just the beginning. I have reason to believe my mother-in-law is planning to harm me, and I need evidence before she makes her move." Within 2 hours, Victoria had retained Marcus Webb, a former FBI agent turned private investigator who specialized in corporate espionage and family disputes among Seattle's wealthy elite. "Mrs. Blackwood," Marcus said as they sat in his downtown office, "you're talking about some serious allegations. Eleanor Blackwood is one of the most connected women in this city. If we're going to build a case against her, we need to be absolutely certain of our facts." Victoria leaned forward. "I know how this sounds, but I need you to investigate her financial records, her phone calls, and I need surveillance on both her and my husband. Also, I want you to look into Sophia Chen, not just who she is, but how she met James." "What exactly are you looking for?" "Proof that Eleanor orchestrated the affair to get me out of the picture. And Marcus, I want you to test everything she's given me to eat or drink over the past few months. I think she's been poisoning me." Marcus's expression grew serious. "That's attempted murder. If you're right, we're not just talking about a divorce case anymore." Over the next 3 days, Victoria played her part perfectly. She acted devastated when James finally returned home. She cried convincingly when he asked for space, and she even agreed to marriage counseling, knowing it was all theater designed to buy her time. The first breakthrough came from Marcus on Thursday morning. "Victoria, you were right about the affair being orchestrated," he said over a secure phone line. "Eleanor Blackwood made a substantial donation to the Children's Hospital Foundation specifically to sponsor James's attendance at that medical conference in Napa. She also arranged for Sophia Chen to be invited as a guest speaker on healthcare technology integration. So she created their meeting. More than that, I've tracked Eleanor's credit card records. She's been paying for their hotel rooms, dinners, even purchased jewelry that James has been giving to Sophia. Your husband thinks he's funding this affair, but Eleanor's been bankrolling the entire relationship." Victoria felt a grim satisfaction. "What about the poisoning? I had the wine glasses from your house tested, the ones Eleanor insisted on using during her visits. Traces of digital flies just like you suspected. Small amounts, but consistent. She's been building it up in your system slowly." The confirmation should have terrified Victoria, but instead it filled her with cold resolve. Eleanor had underestimated her completely, treating her like a naive victim who would never see through the manipulation. "Marcus, I need you to do something else. Can you get me access to Eleanor's private medical records?" "That's illegal, Victoria. So is poisoning someone." "Eleanor Blackwood has a heart condition. I remember James mentioning it years ago. She takes medication for it. I want to know exactly what she's taking and where she gets it." That evening, Victoria received an expected phone call from Eleanor. "Victoria, dear, I heard about James's little indiscretion. I'm mortified, simply mortified. Could you come for dinner Sunday? I think we need to present a united family front. Of course, Eleanor. I'd appreciate the support. Wonderful. And Victoria? Don't let this break you. We Blackwood women are stronger than that. The casual way Eleanor claimed her as family while simultaneously planning her murder made Victoria's blood boil, but she kept her voice steady and grateful. Sunday arrived and Victoria dressed carefully for what she knew would be a performance. But this time she was the one controlling the script. Before leaving for the Blackwood mansion, Victoria met with Marcus in the parking lot of a nearby grocery store. "Are you sure about this plan?" he asked, handing her a small recording device disguised as a pearl earring. "Eleanor thinks I'm a naive flower shop owner who doesn't understand how powerful families operate. She's wrong. I built my business from nothing, and I learned to read people who tried to take advantage of me. Tonight she's going to underestimate me one last time." Victoria also carried a small flask filled with a harmless but bitter-tasting liquid that would mimic the effects of digithias, courtesy of a chemist friend who owed her a favor from her pre-marriage days. The dinner at the Blackwood mansion played out almost exactly as Victoria remembered, with one crucial difference: this time she was ready. Eleanor served the same wine, made the same seemingly supportive comments about family loyalty, and suggested the same walk to her study to see the family heirlooms. But when Eleanor poured the poisoned wine, Victoria was prepared. "You know, Eleanor, I've been having the strangest symptoms lately," Victoria said, taking a careful sip and then setting the glass down. "Nausea, dizziness, irregular heartbeat. James thinks it might be stress from the situation, but I wonder." Eleanor's eyes sharpened with interest. "Oh? What kind of symptoms?" "The kind that might indicate poisoning," Victoria said quietly, watching Eleanor's face carefully. For just a moment, Eleanor's mask slipped, and Victoria saw a flash of panic before the older woman regained her composure. "My dear, that's a very serious accusation. Are you feeling all right? You seem a bit paranoid." "I'm feeling clearer than I have in months. Actually." Victoria stood up, pretending to sway slightly. "In fact, I think I should go to the hospital and have some blood work done. You know, just to be safe." "That's not necessary," Eleanor said quickly. "I'm sure it's just stress. Why don't you come upstairs? I have something that might help you feel better." Victoria allowed herself to be led to Eleanor's study, but this time she was recording every word. When Eleanor opened the antique jewelry box on her desk, Victoria saw what she was really reaching for: a small vial of clear liquid. "Eleanor? What is that?" "Just something to help you relax, dear. You've been under so much pressure." "Is it the same thing you've been putting in my wine for the past 2 months?" Eleanor froze. "I don't know what you mean." "Digitalis. From foxgloves. Ironic, really, considering I'm a florist. I should have recognized the symptoms sooner." Eleanor's composure finally cracked completely. "You have no proof of anything." "Actually, I do." Victoria pulled out her phone and played a recording of Eleanor's confession from her previous timeline, a conversation that hadn't happened yet in this reality, but that Victoria had memorized word for word. "How did you?" "That's impossible. What's impossible is that you thought you could murder me and get away with it." Victoria moved toward the door, but Eleanor blocked her path. "You're not leaving this room," Eleanor said, her voice cold and dangerous. "I've worked too hard to let some little nobody destroy my family's future." "Your family's future? Or your own twisted vision of control?" Eleanor lunged forward with the syringe she'd been hiding. But Victoria was ready. She grabbed a heavy crystal paperweight from the desk and struck Eleanor's wrist, sending the syringe flying across the room. "You insane woman!" Eleanor shrieked, clutching her injured wrist. "I'm not the one who's been slowly murdering her daughter-in-law," Victoria snapped back. "And I'm certainly not the one who manipulated her own son into having an affair just to clear the path for a more suitable wife." Eleanor's eyes widened. "How could you possibly know about how you orchestrated James and Sophia's meeting? How have you been funding their entire relationship? How did you convince James that he fell in love naturally while you pulled all the strings?" Victoria pulled out her phone again and started dialing 911. Police? I need to report an attempted murder. Eleanor Blackwood just tried to inject me with a lethal dose of digital else. Hang up that phone, Eleanor demanded, but Victoria was already moving toward the door. I don't think so. You see, Eleanor, you made one crucial mistake. You assumed I was weak because I was kind. You thought I was stupid because I wasn't born into your world. But I survived building a business in a competitive market, and I learned to spot predators long before I met you. Eleanor made one last desperate grab for the phone, but Victoria easily evaded her. The police are already on their way, Victoria continued. So is my private investigator with evidence of everything you've done. The poisoning, the affair manipulation, the financial records proving you've been bankrolling James and Sophia's relationship. James will never believe you, Eleanor said desperately. He trusts me completely. Maybe, but he won't be able to ignore the evidence, or the fact that you've been systematically poisoning his wife while pretending to support their marriage. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. You know what the beautiful thing about digital ass is, Eleanor? It's also used to treat heart conditions. Your heart condition. The same medication you've been using to poison me is prescribed to you by your cardiologist. Very sloppy of you to use your own prescription to commit murder. Eleanor collapsed into her desk chair, the fight going out of her. How did you figure it all out? Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Let's just say I'm a very fast learner. And you, Eleanor, are about to learn what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. The police sirens were right outside now, and Victoria could hear car doors slamming in the driveway. Mrs. Eleanor Blackwood, Victoria said formally, you're about to discover that this little nobody from the flower shop just became your worst nightmare. As the police entered the mansion, Victoria felt a deep satisfaction. Eleanor had planned to make her disappear quietly, like she was nothing more than an inconvenient obstacle. Instead, Victoria was about to make Eleanor disappear from polite society forever, and unlike Eleanor's plan, this would be completely legal. The recording device in her earring had captured everything, and Marcus would already be delivering the evidence to the district attorney's office. By tomorrow morning, Eleanor Blackwood's name would be splashed across every newspaper in Seattle, not as a charitable socialite, but as an attempted murderer. And this was only the beginning of Victoria's revenge. The Seattle Times headline screamed across the front page, Socialite Eleanor Blackwood arrested for attempted murder. By 7 a.m. Monday morning, every news station in the city was running the story, and Victoria's phone hadn't stopped ringing. She sat in her lawyer Carmen's office, watching the media circus unfold on the conference room television. Judge Harold Blackwood had already issued a statement, distancing himself from his wife's actions. Melissa Blackwood was giving interviews about how she'd tried to warn Victoria and James. James was nowhere to be found. The district attorney wants to meet with you this afternoon, Carmen said, entering with a stack of papers. They're filing charges of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy, and fraud. Eleanor's bail has been set at $2 million. Will she make bail? Her assets have been frozen pending investigation. It turns out Eleanor's been embezzling from 3 different charities she managed. The attempted murder was just the tip of the iceberg. Victoria felt a grim satisfaction. She'd suspected Eleanor's charitable work was more about control and image than actual philanthropy, but embezzlement was a bonus she hadn't expected. What about James? Carmen's expression darkened. That's where things get interesting. James retained his own lawyer and is claiming he knew nothing about his mother's actions. He wants to proceed with the divorce and is offering a very generous settlement. He's trying to distance himself. Smart move, legally speaking. But Victoria, there's something else you should know. Marcus found something in his investigation of James and Sophia's relationship. Carmen slid a folder across the table. Inside were financial records, text messages, and bank statements that made Victoria's blood run cold. James wasn't as innocent as we thought, Carmen continued. He's been transferring money from your joint accounts to offshore accounts in Sophia's name, nearly $400,000 over the past 6 months. Victoria stared at the evidence. While Eleanor had been slowly poisoning her, James had been systematically stealing from her. The divorce settlement he was offering was generous because he was trying to hide the money he'd already taken. There's more. Sophia Chen isn't just a tech mogul's daughter, she's also deeply in debt from a failed startup. James has been paying off her creditors, buying her designer clothes, and even purchased a condo for her in Bellevue. The betrayal cut deeper than Victoria had expected. Even knowing what James was capable of, seeing the extent of his deception laid out in black and white was devastating. "I want everything back," Victoria said quietly. "Every penny he stole, plus interest and damages. We can make that happen." James is in a very weak position right now. His mother's arrest has made him radioactive in Seattle's medical community. 3 hospitals have already suspended his privileges pending investigation into his association with Eleanor's crimes. That afternoon, Victoria found herself face-to-face with District Attorney Michelle Torres, a formidable woman who'd built her career prosecuting white-collar criminals. "Mrs. Blackwood, your evidence against Eleanor is damning," Torres said, reviewing the files Marcus had compiled. "The recording, the poison residue, the financial records showing her funding your husband's affair, it's enough to put her away for 25 years to life. What about James and Sophia? James can be charged as an accessory if we can prove he knew about the poisoning. The financial theft is a separate matter, but given the amounts involved, it's felony embezzlement. And Sophia?" Torres smiled coldly. "Miss Chen has been very cooperative since we explained her legal exposure. She's agreed to testify against both James and Eleanor in exchange for immunity. Turns out she recorded several conversations where James discussed getting rid of you permanently to clear the way for their relationship." Victoria felt the pieces clicking into place. James hadn't been an innocent victim of Eleanor's manipulation. He'd been a willing participant in a plan to eliminate his wife and claim her assets. "There's one more thing," Torres continued. "We've discovered that Eleanor took out a $5 million life insurance policy on you last year, naming James as the beneficiary. She forged your signature on the application. The insurance policy was the final piece of evidence Victoria needed. This hadn't been a crime of passion or family loyalty, it had been a calculated murder for profit, with Eleanor and James working together to eliminate Victoria and claim her life insurance payout." 2 days later, Victoria stood outside the King County Courthouse as Eleanor was led away in handcuffs. The once powerful socialite looked haggard and defeated. Her perfectly styled silver hair disheveled and her designer suit wrinkled from a night in jail. "This isn't over," Eleanor hissed as she passed Victoria. "My family has connections you can't imagine. We'll destroy you. Your family has already destroyed themselves," Victoria replied calmly. "I just documented it." James was arrested that evening at Sophia's Bellevue condo. The video of his perp walk made the 11 o'clock news, showing him trying to shield his face from cameras as reporters shouted questions about his mother's murder plot and his theft of Victoria's money. Sophia, meanwhile, had fled Seattle entirely. Despite her cooperation with prosecutors, she'd apparently decided that staying in the city where she'd helped plan a murder was bad for her tech career prospects. The trial became the social event of the season in Seattle, though not in the way Eleanor had ever imagined. The Blackwood family name, once synonymous with prestige and respectability, was now associated with attempted murder, embezzlement, and fraud. Victoria testified for 3 days, walking the jury through Eleanor's systematic poisoning campaign and James's financial betrayals. The recording of Eleanor's confession played in court was devastating. Hearing the socialite coldly describe her murder plan in her own voice left the courtroom in stunned silence. Eleanor's defense team tried to paint Victoria as a vengeful ex-wife fabricating evidence, but the physical proof was overwhelming. The Digilia's and Victoria's system, the forged insurance policy, the financial records, it all pointed to a coordinated conspiracy to murder Victoria for profit. James's trial was even more damaging to his reputation. Sophia's recorded conversations revealed him discussing various methods to solve the Victoria problem, including staging a car accident and making her death look like a suicide brought on by depression over their failing marriage. When the verdicts came down, Eleanor received 25 years to life for attempted murder and fraud. James got 15 years for conspiracy and embezzlement. Both would serve their sentences in different facilities. Eleanor at the Washington Correction Center for Women, James at a federal prison in Oregon. 6 months after the trials ended, Victoria stood in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons Hotel, surrounded by Seattle's business elite. She was hosting a charity gala for domestic violence victims, funded entirely by the $8 million settlement she'd received from the Blackwood family estate. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria addressed the crowd, wearing a stunning emerald dress that complemented her auburn hair. "Too often, we hear stories of women who didn't survive domestic violence. Tonight, we celebrate survival, justice, and the power of fighting back." The applause was thunderous. Victoria had become something of a celebrity in Seattle, the flower shop owner who'd outsmarted one of the city's most powerful families and brought them to justice. Marcus Webb approached as the crowd dispersed. "How does it feel to be Seattle's most famous crime fighter?" Victoria laughed. "Surreal, but satisfying. Eleanor thought she could make me disappear without consequences. Instead, she disappeared from society permanently. What's next for you?" Victoria gestured toward the elegant crowd around them. "I'm expanding the business. Turns out that surviving an attempted murder by Seattle's social elite is excellent publicity. I have 3 new locations opening next month, and I'm launching a line of organic, poison-free teas." The irony wasn't lost on anyone who knew the story. "And personally?" Victoria smiled, thinking of the kind, intelligent architect she'd been dating, a man who appreciated her strength rather than trying to control it. "I'm learning to trust again, carefully, but genuinely." As the evening wound down, Victoria stepped onto the hotel's balcony overlooking Elliott Bay. The city lights sparkled like jewels against the dark water, and she could see her reflection in the glass doors behind her. Strong, successful, victorious. Eleanor Blackwood had intended to erase Victoria Manning from existence, replacing her with someone more suitable for the family name. Instead, Victoria had erased the Blackwood family from Seattle society, claiming their wealth, their reputation, and their power for herself. The flower shop girl, from middle-class roots, now controlled a business empire worth tens of millions. While Eleanor counted down the years in a prison cell, and James learned what real powerlessness felt like. Sometimes, Victoria reflected, the best revenge wasn't just surviving your enemy's attempts to destroy you. It was taking everything they valued and making it your own. Eleanor Blackwood had created her own worst nightmare, and that nightmare had a name. Victoria Manning, the woman who refused to stay dead. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.